Try this. Put your phone in another room. No music, no book, no scrolling, just sit there, doing nothing. For the first few seconds, it's fine. Then, somewhere around the 90-second mark, something shifts. A low, itchy discomfort creeps in. Not pain, exactly, but close enough that you'd do almost anything to make it stop. That feeling is boredom. And here's the strange part. Evolution had no reason to make doing nothing feel bad. Plenty of animals rest peacefully for hours without any visible distress. So why does your brain treat empty time like a problem that urgently needs solving? Most people assume boredom means nothing interesting is happening. Psychologists disagree. John Eastwood, a clinical psychologist at York University who has spent years researching this exact question, defines boredom as the uncomfortable feeling of wanting to engage with something meaningful while being unable to. Notice what that definition does not say. It doesn't say you have nothing to do. Often you have plenty of options available. The problem isn't a lack of activity, it's that nothing available feels worth doing. This is what researchers call a desire bind. You desperately want to be doing something. At the very same time, you don't want to do any of the things actually in front of you. Your motivation is, in a sense, fighting itself. This is also what separates boredom from two states it often gets confused with. It isn't apathy, where you simply don't care. And it isn't relaxation, where disengaging feels good. In boredom, the wanting is very much still switched on. It just has nowhere to go. When you're bored, your brain doesn't simply go quiet. A specific network becomes more active. The default mode network, a set of connected brain regions that switch on when you're not focused on a task in the outside world. This network is associated with mind-wandering, daydreaming, and thinking about yourself, your memories, your plans, your sense of who you are. In small doses, this is valuable. It's tied to creativity and self-reflection. But boredom researchers have also identified a mismatch happening at the same time between your level of mental arousal and what your environment is actually offering you. Your brain is essentially primed and ready for stimulation, but the situation in front of you isn't providing enough of it to match. Think of it like hunger. Hunger isn't simply an empty stomach. It's a signal your body generates to push you toward food. Boredom appears to work the same way, but for your mind. It's a signal generated to push you toward more meaningful mental engagement. And just like hunger, it isn't a malfunction. It's a system doing exactly what it was built to do. Here's the question that actually matters. Why would evolution build a system that makes idle time feel bad? The leading explanation treats boredom as a call to action, a kind of internal alarm. James Danchard, a cognitive neuroscientist who co-authored a book on the psychology of boredom, frames it around a deeper human need, the need for agency, the need to feel like you're capable, useful, and purposefully interacting with the world around you. When that need goes unmet, when you're not engaging with anything that feels purposeful, boredom shows up to make that failure impossible to ignore. According to Dankert's research, it's precisely because you care about being effective that the feeling stings. If you genuinely didn't care, you'd feel something closer to apathy instead. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes a strange kind of sense. An animal that feels nothing while sitting idle, generation after generation, has no internal push to go explore, forage, build, or learn. An animal that feels a nagging discomfort during unproductive stretches of time has a built-in nudge to go find food, opportunity, or useful information instead. In other words, boredom may be less of a flaw in your design and more of an ancient motivational tool, one that evolved specifically because doing nothing for too long was rarely good for survival. Like most useful biological signals, boredom can also become a problem when it shows up too often or too intensely. Researchers distinguish between state boredom, the ordinary situational kind you feel waiting in a slow line, and trait boredom, a more persistent tendency to feel understimulated across many areas of life. Trait boredom has been linked in research to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and difficulties with self-control. This connection seems to run in both directions. Persistent boredom can wear down a person's sense of purpose over time. At the same time, conditions like depression can flatten interest in things that used to feel engaging, making boredom show up more often as a side effect. There's also a well-documented link between boredom and impulsive, high-stimulation behavior. Because intense activities offer a quick way to escape that uncomfortable, understimulated feeling, chronic boredom has been associated with higher rates of risk-taking and unhealthy coping behaviors as people search for anything that will make the discomfort stop. This is also why certain groups experience boredom more intensely than others. Research on ADHD, for example, points to differences in how the brain regulates dopamine and seeks novelty, meaning ordinary, low-stimulation moments can feel disproportionately uncomfortable, even close to painful, for some people. None of this means boredom itself is dangerous. It means that, like hunger or pain, a signal that's helpful in small, occasional doses can become genuinely difficult to live with when it's constant. If boredom really is a signal rather than a flaw, that changes the obvious response to it. The instinctive move is to escape boredom as fast as possible, usually by reaching for the nearest source of stimulation, like a phone. And that works, briefly. But researchers studying boredom point out that quick distraction doesn't actually resolve the underlying signal. It just temporarily silences it. An alternative approach, supported by some boredom researchers, is to treat the feeling with curiosity instead of avoidance, to notice it and ask what, specifically, feels unmet in this moment, rather than immediately drowning it out. There's also research suggesting that what matters isn't necessarily how exciting an activity is, but whether you chose it yourself. Boredom is closely tied to a lack of felt agency, so even a modest, self-directed task can ease it more effectively than passively consuming entertainment chosen for you. Some psychologists go further, framing boredom as an underrated creative state. Because the same default mode network activated during boredom is also linked to mind-wandering and original thinking. Periods of understimulation have been associated with bursts of creativity and problem-solving, the kind that rarely show up when your attention is fully occupied by something else. So, why do we get bored, and why does it hurt? Because somewhere deep in your evolutionary history, sitting idle for too long was a quiet kind of risk, and your brain developed a way to make sure you never sat still for long without noticing. The discomfort isn't a glitch. It's the feeling of a system that still, after all this time, wants you to go find something worth doing. The question worth asking the next time it shows up isn't, how do I make this stop? It's, what is this actually asking for? If you found this interesting, there's more like it coming. See you in the next one.